Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar.
Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome to the Bert Salazar Retirement Show. My name is Bert Salazar. I'm going to be the host, as I am with all of you every single week. And the episode for today is episode 175. So thanks once again for all of you that have been following my episodes, my podcasts, my webinars, my seminars that I do on an ongoing basis. And the title for this episode, it's pretty interesting because the title to this episode is, have you ever watched a car crash in slow motion? Now, I don't know if any of you know this, but I've been in financial services now for almost 35 years. So I've been a tax planner and a retirement strategist for a long, long time. But prior to that, I had a separate career altogether, and I was in law enforcement for a long time as well. And I was a motorcycle cop in Florida, so as you can imagine, you know, I've seen hundreds of accidents. I have handled and investigated hundreds of automobile accidents, but I had never seen one in slow motion until I had my own personal accident. I'm glad that I only had one accident in my law enforcement career as far as motorcycle cops are concerned, because a vast majority of people in the motorcycle squad, they have to do crazy things in order to enforce traffic laws. So motormen have a tendency to have accidents more often than traditional cops that are driving automobiles. So I only had one accident, and someone cut in front of me, and I lost control of my motorcycle. And I remember vividly, and it's been more than 40 years now. I still remember vividly coming off the motorcycle. Well, first losing control of the motorcycle, and one of the things that you learn is if you're losing control of a motorcycle, let go of the motorcycle. Don't stay with it, because, you know, the motorcycle that I rode weighed over 1,000 pounds, actually over 1,200 pounds. So, you know, that can fall on top of you and really do damage. So I remember letting go of the motorcycle, and I remember falling onto the pavement and rolling over and over and over again. But I also vividly remember that all of this, perhaps because of adrenaline, was happening to me in slow motion. And I kept asking myself, well, Bert, why is it, in my own mind, that you're going so slow but you can't stop? Well, that's your brain playing tricks on you, because when you fall off of a motorcycle doing 40, 50 miles an hour, you're going fairly fast. And although I applied the brakes and I started to lose the control of the motorcycle, then that's when I got off the motorcycle and fell to the ground and started rolling over. So, but it seemed to me that I was going very, very slow. So how do we apply this to the financial world today and what is happening in the United States? And that's something that I want to cover to you. So that's why I decided to name the title for this 175th episode, Have You Ever Watched a Car Crash in Slow Motion? Because this is pretty much what we're seeing today with the Biden administration, which is pretty much an economic car crash in slow motion happening in front of us. Now, the other thing I want to share with you, because before we get started, is that, you know, as you get older, you start to change your perspectives when it comes to your personal, your financial, and your business life. And I tell all my good friends and families that, and family members, that in my situation, the time in your life where you don't give a crap what anyone thinks of you or what anyone says about you, that will be the first time in your life that you're going to find yourself being totally free. So for the last several years now, I would say the last 5 or 6 years, I just don't give a crap about what anybody thinks of me or what anybody says. I know what I'm talking about. So I'm totally free from an economic, business, political, independent, or personal standpoint. So I may share some things with you that you may like. I may share some things with you that you don't like. But at the end of the day, I don't give a crap. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, whether you like it or not. And if you listen to me, fine. And if you don't, that's fine as well. So why am I saying that the Biden administration is an economic car crash in slow motion? Well, there are a lot of things happening right now in the United States that, although the Biden administration does not want to take responsibility for, at the end of the day, they control all three branches of government. They control the presidency, they control the Senate, and they control the House. So who else are you going to blame but yourselves? But believe me, politicians, and this applies to both sides of the aisle. So I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat. This applies to everyone. But at the end of the day, the Democrats are running this country to the ground today. So why am I saying this? Well, because when you're 35 years of age and the government makes a bad law or they pass a bad law, it doesn't have the same impact on your life as when you're 65. So if you go from 35 to 65, you fast forward 30 years, governmental decisions when you're 65 are going to have either a much higher positive or a much higher negative impact on yourself, on your family, and on your finances than when you're 35. And why do I say that? Well, simply because when you're 35, you have time to recover. But when you're 65, you're running out of time, and there may not be enough time left for you to be able to recover from any economic or financial mistakes that the government makes. So you have to be pretty cognizant about that. You have to pay attention to what's going on in the country, and you also have to vote by listening to my famous radio station, which is WIFM. What's in it for me? So when I'm about to vote, I'm a libertarian, but I take a look at all the issues that I find in the year that I'm going to be voting, all the challenges, all the goals and objectives that both parties want to bring forth. And I take each and every one of those and see how that's going to impact me, my family, and my business. And then I will vote accordingly based on those circumstances. So now, if you take a look at inflation today, it is currently at 8%. Actually, it's about 8.5%, the latest numbers. But on the average, I'd say it's about 8%. But the numbers are far from accurate. And by the way, for those of you that may not know this, inflation is nothing more and nothing less than too much money chasing too few goods. And that's something that is happening today. Now, the reason why inflation is so high at this point in time, but by the same token, the numbers are far from accurate, is that if you take a look at the items that most Americans use every single day in order to maintain their standard of living, because remember, the CPI encompasses all the products and services that are sold in the U.S. Some have a much higher inflation, others have a much lower inflation, and then they're going to give you the average of that basket of goods and services that is being sold, and that's why it's somewhere between 8 and 8.5%. But I would argue that it is much higher than that. And why can I argue that? Well, let's go through it now. And this is compared to January of 2021. So, we're going back a year and 4 months, pretty much. because May of 2022 is not over yet. Gasoline is up 43.6%. Airline tickets are up 33.3%. Used cars are up 22.7%. The cost of buying eggs is up 22.6%. Meat, poultry, and fish is up 13.8%. Milk is actually up 14.7%. Coffee is up 13.5%. Electricity is up 11%. And the real average hourly earnings are down 2.6%. So what it's telling you is that most of the items and the goods that we purchase in our economy on a weekly basis are much higher in pricing than what the average 8 to 8.5% is. So that means that if you're in retirement, you have to be extremely careful. You have to count your pennies because you're more than likely going to be able to run out of money before you run out of life. And that's something that is very important if you happen to be a retiree, because if you're fully retired, now you have to live off all the savings that you have been accumulating for many, many years. But most of you, and I can guarantee you, most of you, if not none of you, ever forecasted a retirement distribution plan based on an inflation rate of 8.5%. So most of you are running scared. Believe me, I can feel your pain, but it's something that we need to worry about. And this is why, I'm saying that the Biden administration is an economic car crash in slow motion. Now, what is the answer to basically what they're saying regarding inflation? And this is probably the most imbecile statement that I have ever heard when it comes to economics. They say that, well, we have to tax the wealthy. But at the end of the day, taxing the wealthy and/or corporations really does not reduce inflation as the administration claims. Tax increases are basically added to the cost of doing business, and then that additional cost is then passed on to all consumers. So we end up, the middle class and the poor people, because the wealthy have plenty of money, so they don't have to worry about offsetting the 8.5% inflation rate or 13% or 20%, whatever it may be, because they have plenty of assets to be able to do that. But most Americans are not at that level. So we, the consumers, are going to end up paying for all of this anyways if you're trying to tax the wealthy and or increase taxes on corporations. Now, also remember that an average gallon of gas a year ago was $3.04. Today is $4.47. And if you're looking at diesel, it's north of $5. And why is diesel so important? Because all the large tractor trailers that are taking goods and services from point A to point B are being run on diesel fuel. So obviously you have to add that to the cost of shipping, and then at the end of the day it's going to be added up to the cost of the goods and services that you're purchasing, and then obviously all of us as consumers are going to have to deal with that. Now you wonder, well, why is gasoline so high? Why is the cost of oil so high in the United States? Now the administration wants to, obviously, because they don't want to take responsibility, no administration wants to do, but they're blaming the war in Ukraine and Putin. Now let's face reality. Since January of 2021 up until August of 2021, the price of gasoline went up by 33%, and there was no war going on. Now, what do you think prompted a lot of that? Well, it was all for political reasons, because the first thing that Joe Biden did when he took office, I think it was within the first 24 hours, is he went ahead and canceled the Keystone pipeline that was to deliver oil from Canada to different parts of the United States. And it was halted nothing more, nothing less than for political reasons at the worst possible time. And you may say, well, why is that? Why is it the worst possible time? Well, the reason why it's the worst possible time is that oil contracts are purchased based on future outcomes and future prices. So when all of a sudden we shut down the Keystone pipeline, and they went ahead and also shut down new contracts for energy supplies and drilling and so forth, well, immediately you start looking at the future contracts and you see the price of crude oil going up and up and up because it's a supply and demand issue. So if you're not producing more and you're producing less and the demand is higher, the price is going to go up because it's all about supply and demand. So that's one of the very first things that the administration did that was totally erroneous. And by the way, prior to that, even during the Obama administration, they had done ecological surveys on the Keystone pipeline because oil still coming in is being delivered in a different way through trucks and so forth. It was a lot more energy efficient and more green energy efficient bringing that oil through a pipeline than by try to ship it all throughout the United States in trucks and so forth. So the other question that I have is, well, if we love the environment so much, why are we asking other countries to increase oil production much higher than current levels? Now, we're trying to do that for political reasons only. And the reason is that the U.S. produces oil at a much cleaner rate than the rest of the world. It's all about politics. And that's something that really gets me upset because these political maneuvers and these decision-making processes by politicians, it's impacting all of us, especially those of you and those of us that are either close to retirement or in retirement. Now, most experts also agree that the U.S. is currently in a recession, which is, having two consecutive negative quarters. We had the first quarter that was negative. The second one, we don't know yet, but more than likely it will be a negative quarter. But most experts are saying that the U.S. economy is already in a recession, and that's not a good thing. Now, also the U.S. stock market is currently in a correction mode. And also remember that market crashes occur just about every 5 years, although we had not really had a major crash in over a decade, but it's catching up to us right now. Usually in a market crash, the losses are going to average somewhere around 39%. And it would take years to recover, many a times up to 8 to 10 years to recover, depending on where the average loss that you incurred in your portfolio, whether it's a traditional investment portfolio or a retirement portfolio. Now, food shortages are also growing, but the administration has no answer for that. Now, everything is now being blamed on Putin, like Putin was blamed for the baby formula, or they're blaming the shortage on baby formula. I have a 1-year-old grandchild that is now dealing with those issues. And now they're saying, well, the biggest producer of baby formula had a major challenge. But, we've known about that since, October of 2021. We're now May or entering June of 2022, and we're still dealing with the same issues. And this administration is not doing anything. Perhaps I could have done a warp speed type planning like the Trump administration did with the vaccine, but they haven't even pulled the trigger on that from a business standpoint. So I would argue that we're going to see more and more shortages as we get into the summer months. And by the way, most experts are now predicting that during the summer months, the cost of a gallon of gasoline is going to be north of $6 on the average. So the worst is yet to come in many of these issues, and I hate to be negative, but I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of what I see with the economy today. Now, interest rates are also increasing rapidly and will continue to do so probably for the next 18 to 24 months. I know that the Feds are getting together in June. They're going to be raising the rates again by another 50 basis points or 0.5%. So obviously that's going to create some issues. Our southern border is a created political chaos. We have hundreds of thousands of millions of people crossing the southern border of the United States, pretty much just walking in, and we're not executing the laws of the United States. So if you don't have a border, you really don't have a country. So I don't know how you feel about immigration, and I really don't care. But at the end of the day, I'm a true believer in legal immigration, and we are the greatest country in the world when it comes to legal immigration because we let more people in legally than any other country in the rest of the world. Now, crime is up, and criminals are not being aggressively charged in major crimes. So what do you think that's doing? That's increasing the crime wave in the United States. A bunch of major stores in San Francisco have had to, close down and shut down because it's no longer a crime to steal anything as long as it's under $935. So you can walk into a Walgreens with a bag, put all kinds of stuff there, and just walk out, and no one is going to do anything to you, and you're not going to go to prison. Now, this is not the way that a country is supposed to be run, but this is the way that this country is being run today. Now, several war experts are concerned with the U.S. involvement in Ukraine. Now, just so you'll know, the war machine loves war. So there are many parts of our government and private corporations that they love war and they feel that war is good for the economy. But believe me, I'm a U.S. Marine and I can tell you that war is not pretty at all. And then who goes out and fight these wars? Well, young Americans, and they're coming back either in a body bag or they're so physically damaged that they'll never be able to recover for their entire lives. So it's a major issue that we're now getting closer and closer, which is not something that we had experienced in the last several years. China has become a major threat, and they're pretty much just sitting on the sidelines and watching the show. They're watching everything that's happening in the U.S. They're watching the economy. Obviously, we all know about COVID and what happened there with China and the fact that, even the WTO they hid where it came from for many, many years. And there's still many answers or many questions that have not been answered because of politics. But at the end of the day, China is just sitting back and watching what the U.S. and what the European Union is doing in reference to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Now, CNN just came out with a brand new poll that close to 86% of Americans think that the country is going in the wrong direction. And I happen to be one of them. So if 86% of Americans think that we're going in the wrong direction, that ought to tell you that you got to really pay attention to what's going on, because at the end of the day, it's going to have a negative impact on you, your family, and your finances. Now, the administration is pretty much idle in the decision-making process to tackle this economic mess, and chances are they're not going to do anything about it, and they don't have the ability to do anything about it because they don't have people in the administration that are savvy enough. And you would think that every administration, whether it happens to be a Republican or a Democrat administration, should have smart people making smart decisions. Well, somewhere, somehow, I'm not seeing this in this administration today. Now, what's interesting about all this that I'm telling you about is that, these politicians are getting richer and richer every year, while Americans are getting and becoming poorer and poorer as well. So they're getting richer, we're getting poorer. So, those are things that all of us need to deal with. Because believe me, the vast majority of these politicians in the United States are dirty. They're making millions and millions of dollars on the side. And then we spend way too much time fighting each other, Democrats against Republicans and vice versa. And at the end of the day, we just happen to be puppets, and the puppeteers are the ones that are managing everything. So now that I have given you an update, and I can go even longer, I have much more information to provide you, but I think this should be enough. Now the question is, well, what can you do to avoid this financial abyss? Because this is a financial abyss that is happening right in front of your eyes and will continue to happen for years to come. Well, the first thing that you can try to do is try to reduce your tax liability rate to zero if possible. And there are many different ways that you can do that. Now, obviously, you're going to need a retirement strategist or a tax planner that can help you with that, because more than likely you yourself will not be able to do it, because you just won't know how to do it. Also, if you're in retirement or close to retirement, check your provisional income calculations to help you reduce the taxation of your Social Security benefits. If you didn't know this, for most of you that have not done any type of tax planning whatsoever, most of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxable. And for many of you, it's going to be taxed at 85% of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxed. If you did an okay job, perhaps 50% of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxed. But if you did an outstanding job and you worked through it with a retirement strategist and a tax planner, then more than likely there will be no taxes on your Social Security benefits. So how do you go from 85% of your Social Security benefits to being taxed to 0% being taxed? Well, you have to do provisional income calculations, and you have to rearrange the chairs on your financial Titanic before it actually sinks. Because at the end of the day, by avoiding taxes, you're also reducing and or offsetting inflation. Because remember, inflation is not tax deductible. So on top of that, on top of the inflation rate, whatever your personal inflation rate may be, you're also going to have to pay taxes on those distributions from your retirement accounts. Now, another recommendation I make to all of you is that you need to invest or move some of the assets that you have for retirement, set for retirement today, invest or move those assets to tax-free retirement products. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can move money to your Roth IRAs, your Roth 401ks, your municipal bonds, and even your 7702 plans, which are cash value life insurance plans that the assets in those plans grow on a tax-deferred basis, and you can have access to your money on a tax-preferred basis as well. So maximize your Roth IRA contributions, your Roth 401k contributions, your contributions to your municipal bonds and your 7702 plans in order to help you reduce tax liability in the future, because we all know that taxes are going to have to be much greater in the future than they are today, because otherwise we're going to be, as a country, pretty much bankrupt. And finally, and this is regardless of party affiliation, vote for someone who's going to be protecting your economic way of life. And this is one of the major challenges that I see with many of my clients today. And I have discussions with clients because they're Democrats, and they're blaming the Republicans, and my Republican clients are blaming the Democrats. But at the end of the day, there's no one that can be blamed but yourselves. Because at the end of the day, you need to do the due diligence before you're going to vote for one of these politicians. You should be doing your due diligence as to what is it that they think about capitalism versus socialism, because we're starting to see, more and more socialism in the United States. And believe me, I came from a socialist country, communist country, so I know what all of that is all about, and it's a total mess. Socialism and communism killed over 100 million people in the 20th century, so no one can talk to me about that. But pay attention to what they say and how they say it, because at the end of the day, once they get into power, it's very difficult to get them out. Or once you vote them in, it's hard to vote them out. And whatever decisions they're going to make, believe me, it's not going to apply to themselves, because they're going to be getting richer and richer along the way. But all of you and all of us are going to get poorer and poorer along those lines. So for those of you that are interested in doing some provisional income calculations, or you may be interested in visiting with me regarding tax planning and retirement distribution planning strategies, which are very, very critical for all of us, please feel free to reach out. The best way to get a hold of me, just send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. So Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com. And then I'll reply to you, and you can pick a date on my calendar, and we can schedule a 20-minute phone conference and figure out, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, and see if I can help you or not. You can also call me if you want at area code 786-766-1042. And also always remember that my goal for you and your family is to kind of help you change the way that you see things, because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.